November 2023, built up 1 billion subscribers. So there's 1 billion people on that social network platform all across the world. So it is one of the biggest social networking platforms out there. And it's got a very specific focus in that it's a professional program. LinkedIn is a professional social media platform. And it's a social media platform here really designed to help you with your career and with your professional development. So there's lots of different perceptions about LinkedIn, and I expect many of you on the call today at fairly different stages with your LinkedIn profile. Some of you brand new to LinkedIn thinking, I've heard about LinkedIn, sounds like a great idea, where do I start? And we'll cover some of those kind of basic things, but also go into a little bit more detail about how you can use it. So this particular session is really going to focus on setting up your profile. So that's kind of the initial thing. And if you have a profile, what does good look like? How can I tweak it? How can I improve it to give it me maximum impact? And it's going to really get me noticed by potential employers, by potential organizations, and it's going to aid and assist my job search. So I've mentioned here, it's not just an online CV. So that is one function of it, but it can do a whole range of different things. It can help build your personal brand. And crucially, it's a networking platform. It utilizes everything that social media has to offer. And it's designed to build up your professional network to enhance your employment opportunities. So what are the reasons for using LinkedIn? So everyone has a different perspective of a social media platform. There's pros and cons to it. It's not by no means the only thing that you can use to job search, but I would position it as something that complements your job search. So it's something that while you're doing other things in terms of applying online, looking online for vacancies, but it's having that presence, a professional presence online. And that's exactly what LinkedIn's purpose is to do. So you can use it to market yourself. You can use it to do some research, so you can find lots of jobs on there. All companies have information on there and often have their own web page on there. So you can do some research. If you're applying for jobs, you can use it as a platform to find out a little bit more about the company, some of the trends, what's going on within that company, and it's real time. So a bit like with social media, you'll get the latest things just on their platform. So it's a great place to keep up to date in terms of what's going on with that company. And then the final piece of that is going to be the networking part of it. So you're going to be looking at how can you use it to build your professional network. So when you go to an event that maybe it might be a careers fair, it might be something that's organized within your course. It might be one of our Careers Uncovered events where you have a panel of expert speakers and you have a chance to chat to them afterwards. How can you keep in touch with them? And this is the exact sort of platform that's designed just to start to build up that network. And then you've got maintain that contact and you can kind of build up your kind of digital networking skills, your ability, but crucially the people in your network. And that's so powerful in terms of going forward in your career. And I would say not just now, but as you move through your career, as you go to your first job, and then you start to move, maybe get promoted internally or move out to another organization and go to a slightly bigger role, you'll take those kind of networks with you wherever you go. So if we look, first of all, at your profile itself. So the first thing that stands out is a picture. Now, when you do a CV, the number one thing that all our team says, never put a photograph on your CV. There should be no reason to put a photograph on your CV unless you're going for something like modeling. But LinkedIn is slightly different because with social media, it's much more personal. So actually having a picture on it does bring it to life. It makes you stand out. It makes you a bit more human. And so it's really important to have a photograph on there. And you'll find engagement with your LinkedIn profile will be much greater if you do have a photograph on there. So then we look a little bit about, so how do you position yourself? Because it's a professional networking tool. So having an appropriate photo on there. And I'm going to break it down. I'm a big fan of food. So I'm going to break the session down into 3 main sections. So we're going to go a bit about starters, how to kickstart your profile. And if you have got a profile, having to think about you know, the kind of things, the top tips we talk about, is there things you can do to tweak your profile, to gradually improve it, to help you stand out from the crowd? So that would be our starter. So what we start off with initially is that first impression. So visually, so putting a photograph on LinkedIn. And there's a couple of really basic rules around really putting a photograph on LinkedIn. Just remember the word professional. That's the thing I'll keep just in the back of your mind throughout this session. It's going to be quite a brief and short session, and there'll be some chance to ask questions, and, you know, do put comments in there as well. And my fantastic colleague Carly from our team is on hand as well, who will be able to field some of the questions as well. So think about that photo. That's the kind of headline information. When you first look on, you do a search, you see the photo and often a job title. And underneath that, you'll have a mini headline and a mini summary. So that's, if you like, the starter. That's the snapshot you get in terms of the first impressions on your LinkedIn profile. So picture, there's clearly good pictures and bad pictures when you do your LinkedIn profile. There's some fantastic hairstyles on here. I particularly like the one on the top left-hand corner as well. I think that's almost coming back into fashion. But you can see the different spectrum of photographs people go with. So there's some caricatures. Some people have put pictures from their special occasions. Some people have slightly used some animation to make themselves look slightly different. So really, picking a picture that's not going to be overly non-professional. So in terms of what not to do, don't use a repurposed photograph. Don't have one. This is probably not so much for many of you on the call, but as you go through your career, don't use a photograph that's 20 years old because it's not going to be a fair representation of you. Don't put kind of gimmicky outfits on. So if you're a fan of, I don't know, Star Wars, or I don't know, a certain band or something, don't kind of go full out in terms of, you know, dressing up in a certain way. Nothing from holidays, a sort of holiday snap from, you know, some sort of Caribbean island somewhere. And be natural. You know, you want that warm kind of natural look. You don't want to be looking overly mean or serious, but again, you don't want to be kind of in fits of giggles when you have the picture. And just don't put a really bad picture on there. Some people have to put props on there, which is a big no-no as well. So in terms of examples, there's some really nice examples here of pictures. So you've got a really nice kind of head and shoulder shot, a bit like that passport photo shot, but you're allowed to smile. So you can be a bit more charismatic, and you want to be your genuine self on there. You know, you want it to be a fair reflection of you, but looking fairly smart, good lighting, as if, you know, when you're on these kind of video calls, Zoom and Teams, and that head and shoulder shot. Because if you try and take a slightly more photograph from a further back, you find when you're looking on a mobile device, it's very difficult to see the face. So a good head and shoulders shot should work really, really well. So in terms of the stats on that kind of pictures, you're 21 times more likely to get profile views if you have a photograph, and 36 times more likely to get messages, so direct messages about your LinkedIn profile. So then just some key takeaways then. Be professional. You can smile, look and learn. So do have a look at some other LinkedIn profile pictures and see what you like and what you don't like. And keep it clean, so really nice clean background. So you can see the photos that we had here. All of them were a really nice bright background, sort of fairly neutral, sort of whitish background as well, so that you really stand out in terms of a picture. So that's the picture. So then step number 2 is the headline. So that's a little bit of a really brief summary about you. So you may be aspiring to do something. So for example, you may be an inspiring engineer, you may be aspiring to be a lawyer, you may be aspiring to work in a certain sector. And if you don't work in that sector now, that's something you can put on there. Say, current final year student studying, I don't know, engineering, looking to develop a career in civil engineering, for example. But you can just have a short, snappy headline shot just to say what you're looking to do. So as you say on here, and don't make it boring, don't just put student because that doesn't tell them anything. Say what you're doing now. So if you're a final year, second year student, you could even put you're on track for 2-1 or a first, if that's the case. Think about and identify what you'd like to do next. So what's the aspiration, and keep it really brief. Don't forget with social media, there's a lot of it is about keyword search. So think quite concisely, but think quite carefully about the sort of words that you use, and do think about the keywords. So this person here is a technical recruiter for Walt Disney. And they've put some of the more kind of creative things around. Imagine the possibilities. That's probably linked to the branding, to Disney, but just really factual, and exactly short and snappy. And you can see this person's written, what, 10 words in there? So really short and concise. And then the next part is where you can get to go into a little bit more detail. That's your introduction in terms of a bit about you. So this is almost like a mini lift pitch, is what I generally think of is for that summary. So think about, highlights, interests, aspirations. If people are reading it for maybe 15 seconds or so, 20 seconds, then you get a real good chance to grab their attention, catch their attention, and really make them want to scroll down in terms of all the factual information that you're going to have underneath that kind of key headline pitch. So think of it like a mini covering letter, but much shorter. So focus on any particular accomplishments that you've had. So it might be that you're getting particularly good marks. You might have done some really good work experience that you could mention in there that's inspired you to progress in a certain career. Some of you might have had a huge amount of work experience before you came to university. So you could have a snapshot into, say, 5 years commercial experience in X, Y, and Z. But be factual. So lots of colourful words is really, really good, but it's good to be factual about what you put there as well. And again, you'll notice this come up time and time again is around keywords. So buzzwords that tell you nothing won't give you any kind of concrete information about you as an individual, but keywords do. So developed excellent communication skills, developed resilience, developed leadership skills, those sort of really keywords, and then linking it into how you did that, really, really important. So for example, if you did a great project at university, you could highlight that. If you're doing your final year dissertation, you could pop that in and say actually some of the things that you're doing as part of that, if that links to where you want to be going career-wise after you finish university. So that's the main start, the starter, should I say. So you've done the photograph, we've got a little bit of the headline, and then you've got that kind of introduction pitch that you've got there as well. And then we move on to the main part of the LinkedIn profile. So you get on to the real crux of when you scroll down, this is the kind of core information that you have on there. So we're talking about your experience. Excuse me. So some of you may have a very small amount of experience. Some of you may have huge amounts of experience, but think really carefully about what you put on there. So all of you will have some form of experience that you can put on there. So it might be that you've done a summer job. You might be balancing part-time work with your studies and thinking about the skills that gives you, managing your studies along part-time work. That requires a bit of a balance. It's a real good skill set, regardless of what part-time job you're doing. You may be doing one of our part-time internships here within the university, and great, you can talk a little bit about that. Or you might have done some excellent volunteering work, and there's some really good examples you can choose that you've developed some great skills. You might volunteer for a local organisation, you might volunteer for a youth group, or do some coaching. Anything like that. Think about the skills it's given you rather than the job title, and that's what you can add. And you do it just like the CV. You can put job title or have a job title that reflects what you do, have your dates, and just a couple of bullet points about the sorts of things that you do within that particular role. LinkedIn, being a digital platform, is really, really good because you can add logos. So if you work for a really big company, I don't know if you, for example, if you work for Sainsbury's, great, Sainsbury's logo will come up there. If you work for a really big, well-known company, they're bound to have the logo in there. So that really, really nice. It clicks straight through to that particular company. So it looks a bit more official when you're looking at the page. And exactly with the CV, you want to make it really easy to read. People really skim these sorts of profiles and look at the keywords. So bullet points is a really good way to help reduce down the text and you to be really focused in terms of specific things that you've done within that role. And rather than be just descriptive, think about any achievements that you've had within that role. So if you've had extra levels of responsibility. So for example, if you work in retail, if you're the key holder, or if you do cashing up, those are extra layers of responsibility that give you extra skills. So do put those factual things in there, and that really helps bring it to light, the skills that you're going to bring. If you have any leadership responsibilities or additional responsibilities on top of the sort of standard role, this is the place to put it in, because it shows that you've earned those responsibilities and that you can manage and handle having those additional responsibilities. And then finally, put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter. If there's lots and lots of text, it's slightly overwhelming. And what happens if you see lots of text? Generally, you don't read it all. And then so you'll miss the crucial bits of really good information in there. So keep it concise. Do use those bullet points and think really carefully about those achievements, and get other people to read it. See if they find it easy to read and to pull out the key information that you really want people to pull out. And then in terms of profile views, so if you put work experience on there, you get 12 times more profile views compared to if you have no work experience listed in there. If you're thinking, actually, I really don't have a lot of work experience, and that doesn't spur any ideas from what we've just talked about, do come in and see one of us in the careers team and make an appointment, because we can really talk through. We really find the more we speak to students when they come in with their CV, the more we talk through what they've done. Actually, have done a lot more than what they've actually put on the page. And if you don't say what you've done and make it really, really clear, then the prospective employer is not going to know. So really good to spend some time just thinking about how you articulate all those different bits of experience that you've done. And then education, a really crucial part. So this is probably the most significant part for you that you'll be doing at the moment. You've come to university. That's a really big achievement to be at. A good university, studying a good course if you are undergraduate or postgraduate. So you really want to make that really explicit on your LinkedIn profile. So of course you include the name of your university, the dates, the name of your course, if it's a BSc, BA Honours, a PG course, what the PG course is, an MA or an MSc, or if you're doing a PhD. And then just include a little bit more information about the course. So maybe some of the core modules that you've chosen. If you're in your final year, what your final year project is on, because that shows a really good reflection in terms of things that you're interested in. And remember, recruiters use keywords. So if you're going into a particular sector, so I don't know, if you're going into creative sector in digital, for example, think about the keywords that you're going to be using, because when recruiters are searching for potential candidates, you want your keywords to really hook into and come up as a potential candidate, when they're putting in those search facilities, when they're using the recruitment tool for LinkedIn. You can put in grades. So if you've got particularly good grades, fantastic. If you don't know your grades, but you have a predicted grade, you're able to do that as well. And then obviously you're going to put your schooling before you went to university in there, and your grades, just so you can put a little bit of consistency on there. Your schooling, when you get down to kind of 16 or so, as you move up education, you don't need to put so much information on for your previous kind of school details. You can just put, for example, in the UK, you put, you've got a number of GCSEs, the number that you got, and the sort of grades there between. You don't have to list all the separate qualifications. The other thing with LinkedIn is that it connects you by putting in your university. So for example, Brunel, there'll be a link there. You'll come up on their alumni network. So when people look for people that studied at the university, LinkedIn will allow you to come up in that search facility. And the same for you, when you search for people at the university, you'll be able to find yourself and other people that studied at the university. And that's part of the network that you're part of, being part of this university. So LinkedIn offers the opportunity, if you've got quite visual things, to add those. So you can put media files on there. So unlike a CV where it's quite static, unless you're doing a really creative CV, this is not just on Word. You can add all sorts of attachments. So, for example, within Brunel, there's the Brunel Plus Award that you'll all be eligible to get points for. And some of you may have already signed up, and some of you may be starting to get lots of points and going through the bronze, going through the silver, and then going through the gold. Now, when you get awarded, they're exactly the sorts of things that you can put as a digital uploaded file on your LinkedIn profile. I've also included things like Brunel Volunteers, so you can also get an award for Brunel Volunteers. If you do something, for example, we've got here someone, Brunel graduate, that set up a podcast called Pick Up the Mic, and he's put a digital still on his LinkedIn profile. So they're the sorts of things that you can consider doing. It's just to make you stand out from the crowd a little bit more. So that's the bulk of the middle part of the section. So we've covered work experience and we've covered education. So they're the core kind of things that really help you stand out. And then there's all the nice extra things to have. So if you like the dessert, and these are the extra things that can just help you stand out. Again, we're looking at keywords. So what sort of words that you're putting in there? So we've got a section on volunteering. So this is the chance to highlight any volunteering projects or short or long-term volunteering activities that you've done. You can list those on there. And quite interesting stat that you get 6 times more views if you filled in the volunteering section. So think quite carefully about volunteering, because generally the majority of people have volunteered at some point. Usually if you focus on fairly recent, perhaps the last 3 years, and if you haven't done volunteering, there are lots of opportunities at university. Even if you can only volunteer for an afternoon, we have the volunteering Brunel Volunteers just out quite close to Costcutter. You'll be able to kind of go in there and find all sorts of opportunities. So if you haven't got things, think about during the time at university, do a bit of volunteering and get it on the profile, because that really will help you stand out. And then part 8, we're looking at skills. So what sort of skills can you put on to your profile? And there's a whole range of different things that you may be very specific to your course that you can add. So there's obviously things like programming language. All of you have access to LinkedIn Learning. So that's the digital platform that offers video tutorials on a whole range of different subject areas. And it may be on your course, you don't get the opportunity to do some of those additional skills, but through LinkedIn Learning, there's a huge range of courses you can do, and you can add those on there and they'll be included within your skills sections. So do think quite carefully about the sorts of skills that you can add. The other thing with LinkedIn is that you can get endorsements. If you do add skills, you can ask people in your network to say, actually, can you endorse me? And that literally involves them going onto your profile and they'll say the list of skills. You might put, for example, 5 skills in there. One of those is communication, and they just click on it just to endorse you, to say that actually, yeah, this person's got those skills, and I kind of reinforce that and back that up by just clicking that. And for example, if 10 of your people in your network click that, that means 10 people have endorsed you for those skills. So that all goes to help to add to kind of bolster your kind of particular profile. At this stage, we've obviously gone through everything, and I'm aware there's lots of information. And generally, it's really, really helpful if we can do something and look at a live LinkedIn profile. I have a live LinkedIn profile here. This is a former graduate called Victor Harabari, who set up his own business. Now, if anyone's feeling brave, they're very welcome to pop in the chat their LinkedIn profile. If you don't mind us having a look at the LinkedIn profile, and what I'd like you to do, we'll bring up the LinkedIn profile, and based on some of the things that we've touched on for the last 20 minutes, just put some comments in there, things you really liked about that person's profile, or the things you're thinking, actually, I think I'd recommend maybe tweaking some of those things or just adjust them. How can I enhance that particular profile? So if you wanted to pop in the chat, if you're on LinkedIn at the moment, you're very welcome to put in a LinkedIn profile. If you don't mind us having a look at it, and just giving a bit of feedback from the people on the call at the moment, you're very welcome to do that. But don't worry if you don't want to do that. I have a kind of an example that we can use here. So I'll keep an eye on the chat, but while I'm keeping an eye on the chat, I'll go into this particular profile. Yeah, so this is a live profile. And what I'd like you to do, just in the chat, if I just scroll down, thinking about what we said, first impressions. So looking at the photograph, so looking at the headline, and looking at any further kind of about information. This is our kind of lift pitch. If I just put that on there. So first of all, if there's any comments, what do we think about the photograph in terms of how it looks? And what do we think about that headline? So Victor, raised an investment, biomedical engineer and entrepreneur on a mission to alleviate suffering in the world by finding technological solutions to health afflictions. So if there's any comments on there, if anyone wants to pop in a couple of comments there, so actually really think the photo is great, or I don't think the photo is very good. I really like the headline. I don't really like the headline. You're welcome to put some comments in there. So from a perspective here, I would say excellent photo based on what we've looked at. He's used lots of keywords as Victor in terms of his headline, and rather than a sentence, he's more or less encapsulated or put in lots of keywords. So I think that's really good to put in lots of keywords, because that will help in terms of him coming up on search facilities when recruiters are looking at. And then you've got a little bit about him. So as you can see, that's his lift pitch, no more than 4 or 5 lines. I'd say that's a really good kind of way to pitch things. You wouldn't really want it any longer than that, because people won't really read that much more, but that gives a real snapshot. He's used lots of words, kind of power words in there as well, and a little bit of background in terms of him as an entrepreneur. You can also see his experience. So he's listed his key bits of experience. And in terms of bullet points, absolutely, he's used bullet points. So feedback from myself, I'd say excellent on the bullet points. I'd probably say there's probably a few more bullet points that you may want. Once you've read the first 2 or 3, you're probably unlikely to read all the way down. So it may be he could reduce them slightly, but love the way he's given a really nice brief introduction, really nice factual information here, and used bullet points, no more than 2 lines for each bullet point. So I think that's excellent. He's listed some of his other roles as well, so you can obviously expand on those. And then when it comes to his education, great, very specific about what his education was, his master's. And then again, as you mentioned, it brings up the logo. Now, when you click on this, that will take you straight through to the logo, which I think is really, really good. So you can see all the alumni there. He's also put some of the skills, and we talked about endorsing for skills, so really, really good. And then he's put some of the honours and awards, so some of the extracurricular activity in there. So he's won some funding from Innovate UK, which is great. So it gives you a bit of extra credibility. And then he's put some additional information there about he speaks some other languages, causes he's interested in. And then, as we mentioned, LinkedIn is not just a CV, but it's actually a mechanism for finding out a bit more about companies. So you can follow different companies within this, which is great. So you can find out the companies that he's really, really interested in as well. So I think overall, that's a pretty good LinkedIn profile. And this is someone who's been out of university for maybe 3 years, 2 or 3 years or so. So they've got lots of things to put on there. Just as a bit of a final summing up as well. So this is a really quick session. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So top tips then. So your aim is to really create that kind of compelling profile and a complete profile. So Amarachi's one's a really good example. She's completed the profile. All sections, including the extracurricular sections, all filled in. Fantastic. Don't forget to use keywords. Really, really important, because that's how recruiters will find you, and you'll come up on them when they do searches. We want you to come up on those search facilities as well. And then thinking about building your network. We haven't touched on this hugely, but when you go to any events, if you go to anywhere where there's people with the industry that you're looking to work in, so we do lots of events on campus, so any of our careers fairs or careers events, or if you go off campus and you go to, I don't know, an insight session, chat to the people and just say, can I connect with you on LinkedIn? Really nice. And you start to grow that network, and you can maybe start posting things, just if there's anything particularly professionally wise that you've done that you can post about. And it's a good way of keeping in touch with the network. You can follow companies, so you can keep up to date with different organizations and the trends that are going on with the organization. Great way to keep up to date. There's groups. I mean, you can really dive in hugely. You may find there's so many, you just pick and choose exactly the ones that are going to suit you. And then don't forget you can showcase your work. So we looked at media files you can upload. Bring your best self to the LinkedIn profile. They want to know the best bits about you and what makes you stand out. So to really put the best things on there. And then finally, we haven't mentioned this before, you can get recommendations. So a bit like a reference, you can get people to write a recommendation for you. And that might just be sort of 5 lines of just say, I've worked with this particular person. I found them really professional, hardworking, and delivered excellent work when they were with me. So thinking about the people that you've kind of worked with and look at recommendations. That's a really nice way to reinforce and give a bit of extra, if you like, currency to the work that you've been doing. So you've all got clear things, hopefully some really good takeaways here. So if you haven't registered for LinkedIn, really, really quick to do so. You literally go into LinkedIn and just click on register. Don't use your university email because this will stay with you, your profile, and wherever you go. So when you finish university, use your personal email. Excuse me. It's completely free. Use a good photo, think about the background, think about the headline and the summary that we looked at. A lot of the events that we do here within the PDC, we ask a photographer to come along, and then you can have a professional photograph taken of you, which is perfect for LinkedIn. I attended an event once, and there's a professional photographer from LinkedIn, and that is the photo that I use for my own LinkedIn profile. So that's really, really good to take advantage of those opportunities. And then think about your work experience, your education, and don't forget use some rich media. You can use some really nice rich media files to add on there. And then don't forget, the dessert side of things we looked at was around all the extra things. So the volunteering, the skills, and you mentioned people have done languages, they've won awards, all that sort of thing. And remember, service with a smile. So when you have your photograph, I love Amarachi's photo. So really nice, warm, welcoming, like someone you'd really like to work with. You want to make yourself be quite natural in that photograph.